Winter meetings are continuing out in San Diego, and yesterday, Steven Strasburg signs, well, how about that? The same offer that the Yankees had made to Garrett Cole. Isn't it interesting that Scott Boras is both Strasburg and Garrett Cole's agent? Well, today could be interesting, couldn't it? When will Garrett Cole be signed? Will it be at the winter meetings? We'll have to find out. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. And we're going to talk about those winter meetings today and possible needs of players. You know, the other things I'm hearing about are these trades. The Cubs talking about trading Chris Bryant. I don't quite understand that. Are they throwing in the towel on 2020 before 2020 ever gets here? But right now, I guess the main topic of conversation has got to be Garrett Cole. If it's not Garrett Cole, it's Anthony Rendon. And we're going to spend some time talking about those players this morning. Joining me this morning is my brother, Kevin, who has been all over the Garrett Cole situation. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Arnie. I tell you, the Garrett Cole situation is the topic on everybody's mind in San Diego and all across the baseball world. Right now, the New York Yankees are there. Brian Cashman flew in yesterday morning, and of course it was reported that they offered the 7-year, $245 million package to Cole, which was the exact same thing, as you have mentioned, that the Nationals signed Steven Strasburg for, which makes everybody in the baseball world think and pretty much know that Cole is going to demand higher. One, he's younger. Another, he has no history of arm troubles. And quite frankly, Garrett Cole has been the best pitcher in baseball over the last 2 to 3 seasons. His numbers with Houston are just incredible. He's 16-0 in his last 17 starts. The guy has lights-out stuff, 99 mile per hour fastball with the curveball that breaks off the table. He's got the makeup, and he's got an age that starts with 2. And anytime that comes out, you know everybody is salivating at getting an ace like Garrett Cole. And so the New York Yankees, needing that ace to maybe put them over the top, they have not won a World Series since 2009, they make this early offer. Well, Scott Boras, as you said, is he's very sharp, and he's been doing this for a long time. And so he go ahead and he secures the Steven Strasburg contract for the same amount. Now, are the Yankees forced to go up? I think so. Years, probably yes. And of course, numbers. I'm thinking something like 8 to 9 years at over $300 million. Now you talk about the Anaheim Angels, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. They've signed Mike Trout for this mega contract, $430 million, and yet they don't have the pitching staff to get him into a postseason. Angels have the money too. And there is another team out there in L.A. that always has money of some third world country, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, there's also the talk that they need a third baseman, and we have a certain third baseman from the Washington Nationals named Anthony Rendon who's out there. So what is the Dodgers' plan? I just can't see the Dodgers not taking aim at Garrett Cole either. And, you know, there's always other teams. What are the Red Sox thinking? What are some of the teams that we're not hearing about? You've got to, at this point, know that this guy only comes around once every so often, and maybe there won't be another pitcher like this for the next decade. So you got to go for him.
The thing about the Dodgers is, I was reading this yesterday, the Dodgers are at the bare minimum as it relates to luxury tax issues. So they have free reign to go out and try to sign a Rendon, try to sign a Garrett Cole. It will not affect them as much as it might other teams with the luxury tax issue. So I look for the Dodgers to sort of rise up from the ashes, if you will, on this Garrett Cole issue. Now, Anthony Rendon is another story. I guess it all depends on your priorities. If you look at the Dodgers starting pitching bullpen, pretty good, right? I mean, but at third base, Rendon, I guess you would have to say one of the top 2 players at that position in the major leagues, maybe even the top player at that position. Comes off a heroic World Series, hitting home runs, hitting the clutch, over 30 homers, over 100 RBIs last year. He has all the tools. He can play defensively. So there you go. Now, the Dodgers are the wild card in this thing. The Angels, they go out in the offseason and they get a Baltimore pitcher, okay? That's not exactly the way to win a World Series. And Dylan Bundy, although he could be adequate, certainly not a superstar. The Angels are lacking that stud. And with Trout signed long term, you got to believe they're looking to get back in the game. It's been a long time since the Angels of Anaheim have been in the game for the playoffs.
Well, they've also been linked with a great pitcher in his own right, Madison Bumgarner, who, as we know, is a folk hero in San Francisco and all across the nation for his incredible postseason prowess. He's won 3 World Series with San Francisco. Yeah, he's had some injuries, but he's only 30 years old, and he did improve in the second half of last year. So the fallback plan for the Angels may be Madison Bumgarner, but you've got to sell to that fan base right now that you've got all this money invested. You've got the best player in baseball in Mike Trout. You've got to go out and get that Garrett Cole type pitcher. Garrett Cole grew up 5 miles from Anaheim Stadium. That right there in itself, you think would give them an advantage. Now, Garrett Cole is telling the Yankees there is no home field advantage, but of course he's telling them that. He wants the most money he can get. You can't blame the guy. Right now, his services are wanted by everybody in baseball, and he's going to get the highest bidder. It's like CC Sabathia said, who very similar, was from California and was signed by the Yankees and was the top pitcher in the market in 2009. The Yankees put the full court press on him, and they got him. A lot of people in the industry are saying this is what the Yankees do. When they really want you, they go after you. I think it's very interesting the way they courted him. They almost court him like when you're in recruiting for a college player. The word is, and we've seen the sign of the 2001 World Series, that Garrett Cole grew up a New York Yankee fan, although he's from Southern California. And he had a sign at the 2001 World Series that he was a Yankee fan today, tomorrow, forever, something like that. And Andy Pettitte, of course, we know, legendary pitcher for the New York Yankees, was a pitcher on that 2001 team. Wonder if maybe Garrett Cole's favorite pitcher might have been Andy Pettitte. I don't know. I would think it stands to reason, okay? So Andy Pettitte is on the trip with Brian Cashman, Blake Harris, the new pitching coach for the New York Yankees. And they all go in, and I think that's significant right there. They didn't talk money. They talked relationships. Obviously, Garrett Cole wants to know about his new pitching coach. And then he's also a human being, as we all are, and we have our heroes. And you've got Andy Pettitte in there selling the Yankees. So they want some comfortability. The Yankees don't do this without knowing the priority that he would be. And look what it would mean to that pitching staff. It would mean that you would put a 103-win team last year that missed the World Series by, Game 6, Astros. They go to the bottom of the ninth. You put a Garrett Cole on that team, they might be in the World Series. Okay, Luis Severino was out all last year. You could bring back 2 aces to a team that won 103 games. And the Steinbrenners know this.
The pitching staff the Yankees have, if you were to add Garrett Cole, I mean, look at it. You've got Paxton, who would be your number 2. You've got Severino, I guess, who would be your number 3. Then you throw in Tanaka. An incredible staff, top 5. And Garrett Cole leading that off would just be an awesome staff. Do the Yankees win 110 games? Probably. Do they run away with the American League East? Definitely. And, they haven't won a World Series. The first decade, this past decade, the 2010 decade, was the first decade the Yankees had not won a World Series. And so, or played in a World Series. So here you go. They're hungry. And the ownership appears to have woken up from hibernation. And now you just wonder how much of the full court press continues. Let's talk about Chris Bryant for a moment. Now, Chris Bryant was a hero. He really was on that 2017 World Series championship team when the Cubs won their first World Series in forever. Broke the plague that had haunted the Cubs. And now the Cubs are talking about trading Chris Bryant. Can you believe that? Now, I know he didn't have a great year last year. I know he was hurt as well. But Chris Bryant, I think he's a special player. And what message does it send to your fan base if the Cubs do, in fact, try to trade Chris Bryant? And then second, who or what package of players would you be looking for in return? Now, if they trade Chris Bryant, who would play third base? Do they go out and look at a Rendon? Do they go out and look at a Maikel Franco, who was basically not tendered by the Phillies and now is a free agent? The Cubs have serious salary issues with the salary cap, and they've got to deal with that first. Of course, Chris Bryant being traded would be a big factor in that. So it seems to me this is more of a money business issue than a baseball issue. And to me, that just doesn't sit well. I don't like it. But, hey, I'm not the general manager at the Epstein of the Cubs.
I think Chris Bryant is the face of a franchise there. You're talking about he and Anthony Rizzo both. Megastar. He's an All-American kid. Just an incredible baseball player that can play multiple positions, play third base, play outfield. There's so much flexibility where you can send him. I had heard the rumor the other day that the Cincinnati Reds were interested in him, and of course, if he would go to a team like the Reds, he would play outfield certainly, considering that Eugenio Suarez there, and now they've added Moustakas. But that addition of Chris Bryant, I don't know all the other variables that would have to go into it. It would be strange to me that rumor could take place, because you're talking about a Reds team that's in the same division with the Cubs. If I'm the Cubs, if I do make a trade with Chris Bryant, I think I would think about sending him to the American League and not having to face him 18 times a year, because I think a healthy Chris Bryant is still one of the top 10 to 15 players in the league. And coming back from injury, this guy could set the world on fire, especially if he goes into a park like Cincinnati, for example. Bryant, Anthony Rendon, and Josh Donaldson. The reason I say those three names together is because Rendon, we've already mentioned him. The Dodgers are in on him. The Texas Rangers are kind of a hometown team for Rendon since he's from the Houston area. But the Texas native have also been mentioned with Rendon, who may be the top hitting prospect and, of course, third base prospect in the free agency world right now. If the Nationals lose him, I've heard that it may be Josh Donaldson, who last year was successful with the Braves and could come over and go with the National League East foe in the Washington Nationals. Okay, there are a lot of teams that are linked with Donaldson and Rendon. Maybe the Cubs are waiting to see where they sign, and at that point in time, they can say, okay, let's say the Braves, who are deep in their farm system, as we know, miss out on Donaldson and Rendon. Maybe the Braves are a team that could come off with some of their deep farm system prospects, send them to the Cubs, and the Cubs send Bryant to Atlanta.
Good point. Austin Riley came up last year for Atlanta, and they were hopefully grooming Austin Riley for the third base position. And after his first month, he looked like all world. He really did. But after his first month, he returned to earth, so to speak, and struggled mightily the rest of the year. So I don't know if Austin Riley will be the answer or not the answer. It doesn't appear that he is, at least short term. And so the third base position is up for grabs in Atlanta. You're right. They have all kinds of pitching prospects, and you can never have too much pitching. And that would be a perfect landing spot for Chris Bryant. Another team, and this would require some money, and it's not in their DNA to do this, but another team that has a really deep farm system, the Tampa Bay Rays. And if Tampa would be willing to take on a contract, that Chris Bryant would command, they have the prospects to send to Chicago and to land a Chris Bryant. Now, I say that because the Rays are probably a playoff team this coming year. The pitching is incredible. And can you imagine landing a Chris Bryant to play either third or outfield on that team? I think that could also make sense. The other thing are the Reds players. Now, you say, well, they got Suarez. The Reds have made it really clear that they are going to go all out this year. They've added pitchers already. They've got a really good pitching staff now. And that's another team that they just seem to be primed to make a big splash. I guess Chris Bryant could play outfield in Cincinnati. I don't think that's a likely spot, but it is a possibility that the Reds may be interested in him too.
I think anybody that has a need in the outfield or at third base would be interested in Chris Bryant. I think from the Cubs standpoint, it's going to come down to what they can get in return, because I don't think they're floating that out there without having the thoughts of, we're going to get back a haul. You know, you've got a guy who is, like say, one of the top 10, top 15 players in baseball, and at his best, he's an MVP, as we saw a few years ago. So he's still young. He can play multiple positions. He's a home run RBI guy. If you're the Cubs, you don't trade a Chris Bryant unless you know you're getting back 2, 3, maybe 4 prospects in return. You're looking to maybe rob the train, so to speak, with Chris Bryant to see if somebody's out there thinking he's that one guy. And I think that's interesting that you mentioned Tampa Bay, who, as we know, were the wild card team last year, winning in the 90s last year, and great pitching, young players. Seems like whenever they get somebody, it turns to gold. Chris Bryant could be the face of that franchise, and he may be the guy, as with the Yankees are thinking about with Garrett Cole. Bryant may be the guy that could push the Rays over the top. The Yankees, I have said, if they get Garrett Cole, they are immediately the World Series favorite. One, you take that away from Houston, and you give that to the Yankees. Of course, the Nationals may be having something to say about that by signing Strasburg. And although they said they probably would only sign one of two, there are reports this morning. Of course, this is coming out of Scott Boris's camp, so you don't know what you can believe and what not, because you know he's making deals. But the Nationals are not totally out of it with Anthony Rendon. So, that remains to be seen on who is the prohibitive favorite or who is the slight favorite to be the World Series champion next year. But the Rays are definitely in play. They're one of the teams that if they get a Chris Bryant, I think that's a great mention, they could go to the top and they could battle the Yankees for the American League East title.
No doubt about that. And that's an interesting, that is, the dynamics of these winter meetings are just incredible. How about this one? Garrett Cole, let's go back to him, not necessarily signing with the Yankees, but because of the fact that the Astros offered him a contract, they will receive draft pick compensation if he signs with a new team. And so all signs are he will. So the Astros will get a draft pick, top draft pick, in the 2020 draft. I know they're not crazy about that short term, but long term, look for the Astros to take full advantage of that. The Astros have not made the World Series and won the World Series over the last 3 years being stupid. They have a method to their madness, and I just look with interest to see how the draft goes. Now, other players. Bumgarner, he has said he wants a $100 million contract, and he was basing that on what Cole Hamels signed for with Atlanta. But Bumgarner, we haven't spoken of him this morning. He, to me, is a very intriguing pitcher, and not much being said about him because all the talk seems to be on Garrett Cole.
Yeah, I think Madison Bumgarner was probably the happiest man next to Steven Strasburg when he saw that contract that got up there, this 7-year, $245 million. Because although he's not going to get that kind of number, the fact that Zach Wheeler has already signed a mega deal, and now you've had Strasburg sign that, the resume that Madison Bumgarner brings in for a 30-year-old pitcher, take that into account, 1 year older than Garrett Cole. Okay? He's Madison Bumgarner. We know what he's done in the past. We know how these pitchers sometimes can reinvent themselves. Can we think about Mr. Justin Verlander? Madison Bumgarner could be the left-handed Justin Verlander. And if he is, what a steal somebody would be getting. I still say when you've got the kind of pedigree that Madison Bumgarner has, he's got to be an interesting target out there. And I keep hearing the Chicago White Sox mentioned with him. And don't you think he makes a great fit for that young pitching staff? Giolito, Rodon, the entire staff could have a guy who's a mentor, who's been there before, who still has it, and go in there and get a team that Central could be the White Sox to win this year. Minnesota maybe taking a step back, we don't know, but I could see the White Sox making a play for that division. I tell you another interesting. We were talking about the American League East, and these not to skip around so much, but these pitchers are flying here and there, and the rumors rampant. Hyun-Jin Ryu for the Dodgers. The Toronto Blue Jays are rumored with him. I think that would be an interesting pickup. For the first, up to August last year, there's my thought is Ryu may have been the Cy Young in the National League. He fell off a little bit the last part of August and September, but up until that time, he was pitching lights out. That's an interesting one, too. Don't you love this time of year? I mean, it's just so fun. All the rumors and everything that's going around. I just hope we get a few deals in the next few days, and it doesn't linger on so much into March, so we can set the table and see what these teams are going to look like and get some predictions.
Well, to some, the Hot Stove League is just as interesting, if not more so, than the regular season. And it's because of what you're saying. It seems to be a new story every day. And unlike years past, with Strasburg signing, with Wheeler signing, with all these signings early, and it appears we'll have some more coming, it makes for interesting talk. It makes for interesting research. Ryu going to the Toronto Blue Jays would be, I think, an incredible move by Toronto. Now, he's a ground ball pitcher, and you're playing on AstroTurf, okay? So I don't know that is a great advantage for Ryu. He's used to pitching on natural grass in Chavez Ravine. But he would go to a ballpark that really is a hitter's type park. He's not used to pitching in that atmosphere. But he, like you said, he's through August of this past season, he was the Cy Young. And then all of a sudden he just fell off. Interesting, he did that after I traded for him in fantasy. But that's typically what happens to me. But interesting storylines. We'll keep our eye on it. If there's anything breaking today, we'll try to get back online, be with you live, give you the story. Thank you for joining us this morning. And everybody have a great day from Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports.